their best. And tonight on The Story, we're looking into a controversial practice happening in Multnomah County: harm reduction. Efforts include handing out drug supplies to homeless people. The county chair is proposing more than $6 million in her budget for this work, while asking several departments to make cuts. It's our big story tonight. Thursday morning on this corner of Old Town.
Today we're here from our church because we've seen the need. There's a lot of, especially in this area.
A taste of hope for those living on the streets.
They make tamales, they work hard, they make it for 3 days. They bring it warm, and then this is all donations from our community.
It's ironic situations like this that make me feel like I'm right where I need to be.
God bless you, my friend.
This outreach, something Portland is known for.
I love the city because the city has so much hope.
But there's another side to work like this, often led by Multnomah County's Health Department, called harm reduction.
I actually participate in that program. That I utilize those resources.
Trevor is talking about free, safe smoking supplies.
Pipes and clean needles, alcohol pads, bandages.
Which he uses for his methamphetamine addiction.
So you don't cause as much harm as you normally would.
We are addressing a public health crisis.
Iris Martin works at Outside In, a Southwest Portland nonprofit offering medical services for homeless people. It's also one of the county-funded groups that give drug supplies to people like Trevor.
I think that we're taking people out of the shadows and we're bringing them into spaces where when they're ready to have really in-depth conversations about what treatment and recovery look like.
In the last 5 years, Outside In has exchanged over 5 million syringes and had reports of reversing over 2,000 overdoses. Previously, they've received roughly $1 million from Multnomah County for harm reduction services.
Not one thing is solving this crisis like supplies, right? It is having low barrier, integrated care to respond to the crisis.
Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Pederson has proposed putting more than $6 million for harm reduction work in her budget. Vega Pederson tells KGW in a statement, Multnomah County is the community's public health authority, responsible for the health of every person. This requires approaches to meet the diverse needs of people as addiction and overdoses continue to impact our community deeply. My budget supports a full spectrum of substance use prevention and treatment supports. Harm reduction is one critical piece of the county's work to save lives.
This is encouraging news for us, at least, for making sure that we have funding to continue our vital and life-saving services here at Outside In.
But some who live downtown, like Kara Cawley, see it differently.
Yeah, I know we're in Oregon. It feels like the Wild West. Like, here's your needles, like whatever happens, go for it. That just doesn't, it defies common sense.
She sits on the board of Friends of Cooch Park.
My main plea to the Multnomah County chair is this should be regulated in some way. Like it shouldn't just be allowed for people to just hand out needles wherever. As a neighbor and like as a parent of children, like if you're gonna hand out needles, that is, bringing drug users to the neighborhood, possibly bringing drug dealers to the neighborhood. There needs to be some accountability.
The chair's proposed investment in harm reduction includes more than just drug supplies. It also covers things like counseling services, overdose prevention education, and sexual health services, with a target of reaching 8,000 people.
I wouldn't be against it because even though we're all making our own decisions to live this life and to be homeless, we still have people that love us, and we love people in our lives, and this isn't going to be forever. That $6 million could help us honestly, it could help us transition into the next chapter of our lives.
So harm reduction is just one part of the chair's proposed $4 billion budget. And we'll get to more of the whole budget in just a moment. But we want to stick with harm reduction for now. That program is part of the county's health department. And while it's a $6 million proposed investment, the program is actually facing a cut of $300,000 compared to last year's budget. Now, I caught up with some of the county commissioners today, and here's what they had to say about this plan for harm reduction.
but I'll want to understand it. But I will say when they were handing out foil and straw, that absolutely was more an enablement versus actually helping people get on a path to treatment and recovery.
We know that harm reduction is more than needle exchange, and so I want to know specifically what each line item is in harm reduction and making sure we have it connected to the bigger addiction services that we fund.
Okay, now taking a step back to look at the big picture of the chair's budget. Her proposal, again, is $4 billion, and it addresses a $15 million shortfall in the county's general fund. Today, county commissioners voted 4-1 to sort of approve her budget, but that approval basically just means this will be the working document they tweak in the weeks to come. The final vote will be in June. Commissioner Julia Brim Edwards was the only one to vote no today, saying they haven't had enough time to look at the chair's proposal before today's vote. But now that the chair's budget is in its working document phase, here are some highlights. The chair is proposing eliminating 102 full-time staff positions. Some are already vacant, but that includes cutting 12 positions from the Department of Community Justice and 14 positions and more than $3 million in cuts from the Department of County Human Services. Now, as for public safety, the sheriff's office is safe. No proposed cuts coming there. In fact, the chair is proposing adding more than $1 million in contingency funds to the sheriff's budget for more jail capacity if that's needed. However, the district attorney's office is not so lucky. It's facing a $3 million cut. The DA's office says that's a 5% cut based on its current funding, which includes some one-time dollars. Without those one-time funds, the chair's proposal frames it as a 2% cut to that office.
I also think it's important to look at the DA's budget and remember that a lot of the ad package wasn't funded, and I don't think that's a cut. Not funding new programs or new additions or new proposals isn't the same thing as having to close programs.
And we can't shortchange another really important part of our public safety system, which is the DA's office.
Now, as for homeless services and the Homeless Services Department, it's facing nearly $60 million in program reductions, including more than $1 million cut from employment programs and over $2 million cut from rent assistance. The chair is also proposing sending money meant for shelter expansion elsewhere. She wants to keep existing shelter beds open by drawing on money from the general fund, and she wants to send $10 million to the city for its own shelter programs.
These are things we know we need ongoing, and so that's where I think we have to ask the hard question of, this is a nice to have, but is it a core service, and what do we want to make sure we have ongoing? And one of those things is rent assistance out of shelter, so we can make sure folks aren't just stuck inside our shelter programs.
The chair is also proposing a handful of cuts to school-based mental health services. That one's facing pushback from community members and commissioners.
We know coming out of COVID that young people suffered disproportionately, being isolated socially, especially in East Portland, where there's not necessarily a lot of other resources for students. So those are very, very critical supports for the students in those schools.
So again, there are about 5 weeks for commissioners to propose changes to the chair's budget before that vote is finalized. I asked these commissioners about their priorities moving forward.
We absolutely have to have income acquisition for folks in our anti-poverty programs and homeless services. So I want to bring back funding to employment programs, to our benefits acquisition, so a team that helps people get Social Security.
Some places where I will look to fund some ad backs or to restore some programming or to beef up public safety would be, there's new positions in these budgets, so I'm going to be taking a critical look at any proposed new positions. There also were some investments made in sort of the most senior levels of management last time around, or last budget year, and those would be things that I would look at as well.
Okay, so joining us now live is another county commissioner, Megan Moyer, to share her take on the chair's proposal. Commissioner Moyer, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so when you first saw the chair's proposal, what stood out to you?
I think that over a $4 billion budget, I'm really focused on that $60 million in homeless services and $15+ million of general fund. Do I totally align on what to cut? No. I certainly am looking to amend some of that. I would like to see, like my fellow commissioner said before, restoration of some of those really important community services. And I also agree that we need to take a deeper look at our administrative costs. I didn't see enough of a hard focus on reducing levels of management, looking for efficiencies, areas in which reductions would not impact what services the community is receiving.
So you did vote to approve this proposal today, but I'm curious about something you just said about the administrative pieces. Is there any positions in particular that you would look to cut?
I have done is I've looked at where we've had position growth over the last 3 to 4 years. And there are some areas that I've seen a significant amount of additional staffing that aren't really public facing or direct service. Some of that is in layers of management. Some of that is in growth in internal services like human resources, communications. These are all, they do a great job. This is not a reflection on the work being done by the people in those positions. But when we have to consider trade-offs between services that the public is counting on and things that help us do our work, I'm wanting to take a deeper look at those things that we might be able to tighten our belt so that it's not direct services that are impacted.
What do you think about the $6 million for harm reduction while other departments like the DA's office are facing cuts?
You know, I have mixed feelings about harm reduction. Some I am passionately supportive of, and some I'm not sure really serve a public interest. I am strongly supportive of things that prevent overdose deaths and that keep the spreading of transmittable diseases. You know, those by not doing that prevention work, we lose people that are somebody's daughter, son, brother, sister. You know, I believe in recovery. I want to help expand the path to recovery, but you can't recover if you die. So that's one of those areas that, you know, I don't think you can brush it all with one stroke. Some things I am more supportive of than others, but I am certainly supportive of harm reduction that saves lives.
Are you supportive of handing out safe smoking supplies like foil and straws and meth pipes?
That's one that I'm less comfortable with. I am supportive of needle exchange. That's been an evidence-based practice for a long time. See, again, I think it's about the details. You know, I think we have conversations about handing out tents, and I have mixed feelings about that. You know, I think in extreme weather events, that makes sense, but as like an ongoing service, I am concerned that doesn't really promote people engaging in housing services and finding a path to ending homelessness.
So let's talk about cuts to shelter expansion. Looking at county data, it appears the number of people on our streets is only growing. So do you think it's a good idea to cut shelter expansion?
Well, I look at the homeless services as a spectrum in which we have to have a balanced approach. I am, like I think everyone, really wanting to make sure that we have shelter options. But if we only fund shelters and don't have those next levels of housing, permanent supported housing, rental assistance, transitional housing, shelter can end up being a purgatory for individuals, and then that doesn't allow us actually to serve more people. So I'm looking for the right balance. Certainly, this is a partnership with the city of Portland. I'm very supportive of the work they're doing. So we have to look at, as a total, are we striking the right balance? Homeless services as a whole, I am supportive of trying to restore more services too.
Are there any cuts that are not on the table that you would propose?
Yeah, I'm already looking at proposing amendments to the budget. I have 2 that I'm putting forward right away. I've got more in development. You know, one is around school-based mental health services. I have a proposal that's budget neutral to restore those counselors back to the schools. And the way I would pay for that is a reduction in senior management. I'm also looking at making sure that the county has the tools we need for the next several years that also look like they may be tight budgets to make smart strategic decisions. So I'm actually looking to make a trade-off, a reduction in communication staff in exchange for adding budget analysts who are able to take a deeper, harder look at the program offers that we have. What are they delivering? Is it the best way? Are we meeting our outcomes and goals? What are efficiencies? And, be able to be a check on what is being brought forward by departments, because we need that level of information in these difficult budget times to make smart decisions.
All right, Commissioner Megan Moyer, thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So the county board will have 3 chances to hear from you about this budget. The first public hearing is next Wednesday at 6 p.m. in the Multnomah County boardroom. So talk to us. What is going through your mind when it comes to the county chair's budget proposal, or any changes the commissioners hope to make over the next month? And what about the money for harm reduction or those cuts to the DA's office? Let us know. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Well, turning now to Washington County and a leadership shakeup at Clean Water Services, which was recently exposed by an investigation by the Oregonian for lavish trips to Hawaii and big-time spending on local meals. The organization's CEO, Diane Taniguchi-Dennis, has resigned effective next month. She joined Clean Water Services in 2011 as Deputy General Manager and was named CEO in 2018. Her last day is June 6th. The Oregonian investigation showed the agency was not shy, racking up business expenses and trips to Hawaiian resorts, all while residents, get this, were facing a rate hike. Last month, Washington County's Board of Commissioners unanimously passed a resolution ordering Clean Water Services to hire an independent auditor to look at their spending, as well as to review and develop written policies around, quote, allowable travel. The Clean Water Services Board of Directors will begin a national search for new leadership in the coming weeks. Well, coming up, an update to a story that we brought you last week on how the Trump administration's funding cuts are impacting Oregon, why advocates say the cuts don't actually save taxpayers money and instead silence programs serving certain communities. That's when the story returns. Now to an update on U.S. Department of Justice cuts to Oregon programs. Investigative reporter Evan Watson first brought us this story on Friday, looking at the impacts to grant projects locally that are now stopped in their tracks. Since then, he kept digging and uncovered that most of these cuts will not save taxpayers any money at all.
The U.S. Department of Justice cut hundreds of grant programs nationwide, many focused on preventing gun violence and supporting crime victims. Among the cuts, an Oregon program to improve legal services for disabled crime victims. Rihanna Hensley helped craft the training that's now shelved without funding.
We matter, and just because you may see us as lacking some kind of disability doesn't mean we lack the right to justice.
The Trump administration said the grants no longer effectuate agency priorities, the latest slash to government services. Christina Rose, the former director of the Office for Victims of Crime within the Department of Justice, says these cuts just don't make sense.
When this is used as an example of cutting government funds and being a benefit for taxpayers, that really couldn't be further from the truth.
Rose, a Biden administration appointee, oversaw these grant programs until this year. She says about 80% of these now cut grants were awarded through the Crime Victims Fund, a pot made up of fines and penalties from federal criminal convictions, not taxpayer dollars. With these programs now halted, that money goes right back into the CVF to wait for another grant proposal down the line. Any community benefits are delayed for years.
Cutting off programs mid-grant is probably one of the most inefficient ways you could manage government money.
If the cuts are inefficient and if they don't save taxpayers any money, why make them? Rose sees a common thread between the halted programs, evident in the project descriptions. Many reference communities of color, disproportionate impacts of violence, and equitable outcomes for crime victims and young people. In other terms, keywords for diversity, equity, and inclusion, a stated target of the Trump administration.
You can't make believe these communities don't exist by taking out grants because of a certain word in the title of the grant. When you erase those words, you're really erasing the truth about victimization in this country.
Rihanna Hensley hopes the administration restores funding for disabled crime victims in Oregon.
We have a much higher chance to not only be victims of crime, but be victims of violent crime.
Well, Evan Watson joins me now. Evan, isn't this just normal when we get a new president, a new administration?
Partly. It is normal or typical for new federal grant requests to be eliminated or canceled when a new administration president takes over. But Rose told me that she has never seen in progress midstream grants be canceled out. And that's what made this so jarring to her, seeing the progress just kind of halted as things were working.
Is there any chance of the funding coming back?
There is some looking into this right now. Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee are asking for answers, asking the DOJ for more information. By May 19th is the deadline, but there's no indication right now that the Trump administration will reverse these cuts. And once the cuts were made back on April 22, the big sweeping ones, a lot of people had to find new work, right? What are we going to do next? That funding stops, so they've moved on to other jobs, look for new opportunities. It's not just as easy as like, hey, we're going to get this money back on the table, pick up where you left off.
Yeah, it's never easy.
Right.
Evan Watson, thanks so much. white smoke and the tolling of bells at the Vatican today signaled the cardinals of the conclave had chosen the new leader for the Catholic Church. He is, for the first time, an American. Cardinal Robert Prevost of Chicago, who's also a citizen of Peru, he's now taken the name of Pope Leo XIV. And as he emerged onto the balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square, Pope Leo made it clear that he intends to follow in the footsteps of Pope Francis, calling for an open, giving, and united church. He'll now lead 1.4 billion Catholics, the largest Christian denomination in the world. Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. The good stuff is coming up next. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. If you ever miss an episode of The Story at 6:30, we re-air the episode at 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. on our TV app, KGW+. It'll also be airing there the next day at 11:30 a.m., and you can download that free app right now. It's on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. Have a great Thursday night. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.